Hey everybody, and welcome to the first of 2 bonus episodes for How I Built It, in between seasons 5 and 6. Season 6 will be coming back in mid-January, and I'm really excited about both the lineup and the sponsors. I'm also really excited about this second bonus episode, which is going to be a turned tables interview where my friend Jeff Large interviews me about my career and how I built the podcast and things like that. But today, we are looking at implementing Gutenberg. So over on my YouTube channel, I had a 4-part mini-series where I interviewed different people about how they implemented the new block editor in WordPress 5.0 before WordPress 5.0 came out. Those people were Justin Sainton, Rene Morozowich, Bill Erickson, and Alonso Indocochea. And in each interview, we talked kind of about a different aspect of their approach to implementing this very beta software. So really excited for you to hear this. The videos, again, are up on my YouTube channel. They'll be in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at howibuilt.it. But I figured I would put them all here. They are audio interviews anyway, so you can listen to them all right in a row. They all run around 15 minutes. So this is a nice hour-long episode for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everybody, Joe Casabona here. Welcome to this mini-series I'm doing about implementing Gutenberg in the real world. And I'm really excited. My first guest today is Justin Sainton of Zayo, and he graciously agreed to come on the show and talk about a site that he recently implemented with Gutenberg. Justin, how are you?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you for piloting this series with me. I don't usually do like the Zoom call recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so we'll see how it goes.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So this shouldn't take too long, right? People say that YouTube videos should be like less than 15 minutes to keep attention span. And I just wanted to run through a couple of questions with you. So maybe you could talk about a little bit about like who you are and what you do, and then about this project.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Justin. I run a small agency called Zayo. We're out of Portland, Oregon. And most of what we do is kind of like the upper end of the WooCommerce market, right? So this isn't like, we don't spend most of our days doing theme builds and kind of basic setups and things like that. A lot of times it's migrations. A lot of times it's custom front-end apps with, Vue or React or whatever, that kind of stuff, or solving migration problems or workflow problems, that type of stuff. So that's what we spend our days doing. And this project was actually a really cool project. It was, it's from a company in Charleston, South Carolina called Rochambeau, which is, for anybody who's ever watched South Park, it has a very different connotation.
Yes.
That's not the connotation they're going for. They actually,
I suspect they're probably named after like the the Revolutionary War. Was it a general? I think there was a general named Rochambeau.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes. I'm no history buff, but sure. And anyway, they're a great client, and they sell really high-end lighting, some commercial, some residential. Really their focus for their client base is like wholesalers and interior designers, things like that. These aren't like the $200 ceiling fans with lights that you buy at Home Depot. These are like $8,000 chandeliers that you put in like a $3 million house. Lighting like that. And so they came to us with a bunch of problems. They had a WooCommerce set up, and their existing developer had kind of reached his capacity on what he could do. And so they came to us to kind of get some increase in capacity. One of the issues that they had was they wanted to build a design your own kind of page where people could come and pick out a frame for a chandelier. They could come and pick out beads for a chandelier, specific lights for a chandelier. And then they could do kind of whatever they want. They could build their own. Again, their client base was built off of a lot of designers. So having this kind of functionality was important. And so this wasn't, when we came into this problem, Gutenberg wasn't like the most obvious way to solve this issue. But at the time, Gutenberg was not totally stable, but stable enough. This was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. It was stable enough to say, let's give it a go and see what we can do with it. Maybe it'll be a good fit, maybe it won't. So we decided to really use Gutenberg as kind of a rapid prototyping tool for like an app, right? So normally we might kind of build this front end in, React or Vue or whatever, and have a real custom solution. But with their timeline and budgetary requirements and kind of what we saw as the potential for Gutenberg, we thought it could be a really cool use case for this. So we didn't really dive into using Gutenberg as what we really like it for now is like writing blog posts and then kind of going back over it and adding flavor to it. It's right now it's perfect for that and it works really beautifully. It doesn't really work right now great as like a page builder, as a prototyping app, but we decided to use it that way anyway. And so that's kind of how we hopped into it and where we found some really powerful things about it and then some real pain points about it that we can see a lot of potential for in the future. So while it's really great for, basic blog posts, you can go back and add images or galleries or quotes or whatever, super easy. We wanted to build a system that was kind of a step-by-step system, right? So you have to start out with a whole kind of grid of chandelier frames, and then once you select a chandelier frame, you have to select how, if you want the 18 or 24 inch, and then you have to go and select the beads you want, the light that you want. And so we had to really build this process that we ended up adding a lot of kind of CSS and JavaScript flavor to, but we were able to build the overall kind of layout in Gutenberg, and doing that was actually pretty easy and pretty powerful. And this was at the point, and I feel embarrassed that I'm not following it closely enough, but this was at the point when the columns block was fairly new, like it was still in beta.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's out of beta yet or not. But having that was actually really helpful because it kind of helped us lay things out in such a way that, this client, their customer base is designers, they have designers themselves. So they were able to send us like these really kind of semi-low fidelity mock-ups and say, hey, can it look like this? And we're able to take those mock-ups, kind of prototype it in Gutenberg, and then get something that's really, really close to their vision. And so being able to use it as sort of like a rapid prototyping tool and then add all the extra flavor to it with some extra CSS and JavaScript was actually really cool and kind of a cool way to use it.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because, I think a lot of people might expecting to hear, I was certainly expecting to hear something like, oh yeah, we just took this like vanilla kind of site and converted it to Gutenberg, and like now we can manage posts and pages a little bit easier. But
Sure.
right out the gate, we're talking about like a straight up application built with Gutenberg. And I I like that you mentioned you were going to use React, you decided on Gutenberg, and this was a good starting point almost, right? You had to add some extra stuff in there, but this was a good kind of kickstart for the project. So uh, my next question is, uh, what do you think was maybe the easiest, or what was made a lot easier with Gutenberg? I'm sure you definitely said a few things there, but what's like a standout thing for you?
Yeah. So when you're talking about like part of this application building process is really ultimately like page layout and UI component building. And when people hear React, sometimes if they're not familiar with it, it feels big and scary. But ultimately, all React or Vue is sort of a codified framework for UI components.
Mhm.
And so having the 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 ability to use Gutenberg in the same way as React, right? So it's not necessarily code as much as it is the purpose of the code. And
Mhm.
so it's this sort of like codified library of UI components. That's really what the blocks are. And so having that kind of consistent component library to be able to use to build out this application, that was a lot easier. And being able to use something that was built in such a way that it's good, right? I mean, sometimes we really like use different metrics and heuristics of what's like good code, and you can look at something like say like Visual Composer and be like, well, for all of its robust powerfulness, whatever, it's not good. But then you can look at something like Gutenberg and say, for all of its flaws and failings, it's good, right? And so there's that sort of like gut feeling of, is it good or is it not good? And so being able to go out of the gate with something that was like good, that to me like was the real benefit and the real power of Gutenberg. Is like, I'm building something that I know is built and will continue to be built on good foundations. For right now, I don't know when this will air, but right now the big thing is like, oh man, is it accessible? And yeah, in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. I'm not the expert there, but I think I have enough trust in what it is to say, yeah, it's good. It's gonna get there.
I really love that point of view because you're right. At the time of this recording, The dates have been announced. People think it's too soon. I'm people that think it's too soon, right? Or too close to Black Friday. There's the accessibility discussion happening right now. And there's just kind of a lot of bad press. But for since January, I've been saying, hey, I think this is a really good thing. It's a really good thing for new users. And I think you're maybe part of the reason I'm doing this series is to demonstrate that. And I can't imagine a better project to start with than this one because, again, you're coming out the gate. You're saying Gutenberg is not just like a blogging thing. It's a really good framework for. I like what you said. The purpose of the code, right?
Yeah.
So I really like that. But on that same token, and you mentioned this a little bit, but maybe what's a standout thing that didn't go as expected for you?
Sure. Yeah, no. So, and this is actually really simple and it was really simple to fix. But one of the things that I wish worked a little bit better was I mean, the layout of the site on the front end was kind of very widescreen. It wasn't totally full screen, but it was pretty wide. And by default in Gutenberg, it's very much not wide. I think the default kind of window that you work with in Gutenberg is like 600 or 700 pixels or something like that.
Hmm.
So it's really in no way reflective of most front ends of websites.
Yeah.
And so I wish there was a way, I think at some point there was either a feature plugin or maybe it's already in core, like with the customizer, where you could drag the size of the customizer because a lot of people were doing these kind of interesting layout things with the customizer and needed more space in that little sidebar you get with it, right? And so I think at some point there was a way to kind of drag it to make it bigger. I would love if there was like an easy way to do that in Gutenberg where you didn't necessarily have to go overwrite some CSS, which is, what the handbook says to do and is what we
Hmm.
did eventually, was just to update the CSS to say, hey, here's a full width, here's a wide width, and here's the like standard width. It would be cool if it just kind of lets you as a user just kind of stretch it and do that, because once we did that, the reflection of it from the front end to the back end, there was a lot less discrepancy there and it made the layout kind of a lot more predictable. And so that was just a really little thing that was simple to fix, but it made a huge difference. And I wish it was a little bit more natural to do that.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense too, because the big problem with today, the 4.9 and before editor is that it's not a what you see is what you get experience, right? And
Right.
Gutenberg starts to solve that a little bit, but you're still not getting the real like it's not like moving into a page builder like Beaver Builder and actually
Sure.
seeing your site layout and how things will actually look. Like when you click done, the only thing that changes is the bar disappears.
Right.
But having a wider, especially, I could see kind of why they did it, right? Because
Yeah.
people have different screen sizes and you want to make sure the content looks really good in the editor to like kind of showcase what it's doing. But I have
Sure.
a 32-inch screen. It's like a 4K monitor or Ultra HD or whatever they're calling it
Yeah.
these days. But so that doesn't leave a lot of that doesn't utilize the screen real estate. So I
Right.
like that was kind of the problem you ran into, and I like the fix for it. So um, I think that that's a really good piece of feedback, and it definitely could be a feature plugin or something to be included in themes. I believe that's probably what the handbook recommends, right? Um,
Yeah.
so cool. And my last question, this has been great. My last question is for those who want to start working with Gutenberg on their projects today,
Mm.
what recommendations do you have?
Yeah, so I would say start slow. I think there's a lot of people who really like to be on the cutting edge. I would say I'm right there with them. We're not quite ready to go with our clients and say, hey, let's build out your entire site in Gutenberg and you have nothing to worry about 6 months from now. We
Mhm.
don't really feel that comfortable. But with this client, it was a great example of, hey, we're not going to go rebuild your entire site. We're going to take this one section of your site and rebuild it in Gutenberg, or even on our own company website. For all of our new blog posts, we're starting to use Gutenberg instead of the classic editor. And so I would say for somebody who's looking to get started, don't feel like you have to start with everything immediately. Start with just your new blog post. Start with maybe one page on your site or a site for a client. And kind of start to get your feet wet a little bit. I think once you do, and once you start to familiarize yourself with it, my hunch is there's a lot of lurkers with
Mhm.
Gutenberg right now. There's a lot of people who are listening to all the feedback and saying, "Oh, it's not ready, it's not good. There's all these problems with it," but a lot of those people probably don't even use it, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
I think if people actually just say, hey, I'm going to start small, I'm going to start with something and just start to use it. I'm going to read the handbook, I'm going to understand the code a little bit. I don't have to learn React, I'm just going to learn a little bit. I think if people start somewhere and start with a little bit and just get used to it, they'll actually really love it. And that's been my experience so far, is it just starting with a little bit, a little client project here, a little piece of the website here, our own company blog. It's like, you know what? This has come a long way from when I first tried it like a year ago. And it's actually quite good to go back to that kind of heuristic, that gut feeling. Is it
Mhm.
good? And so I think, start small, start somewhere and get that sense of like, okay, this is actually pretty good. And then you can build from there.
That's great advice. I love that. And I think that I will link this in the description for the video below. But Gutenberg Ramp by the Automatic team, the WordPress VIP team, I think is a very good thing to help you implement Justin's advice of starting slow. So, Justin, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so Twitter's always good. JS_Zao, ZAO on Twitter's great. Our company website, zao.is. And yeah, those are kind of the main places I hang out.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to a second episode of this mini series I'm doing about implementing Gutenberg. I'm Joe Casabona, and today my guest is Rene Morozowich. Is that right?
Yes,
Excellent.
it is. Yes.
She is a self-employed WordPress developer, and we're going to be talking about how she used Gutenberg on a local company's website. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, welcome, Rene. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Cool. Very cool. So why don't we start out with just who you are and what you do?
Yeah, great. So I am a self-employed WordPress developer. I live outside of Pittsburgh, and I've been doing this for over a year now, and I love it. I love WordPress. I love development. I love working with people. I love the variety. I love that we're doing this at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's all good. Like, this is a great career path.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy being in the space as well, despite some of the drama. If you've seen me on the Gutenberg live show, I get pretty worked up about certain things, but it's all from a place of love. I'm a New York Italian, and so we're very passionate about things.
Right. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. So you are outside of Pittsburgh. I enjoy the Pittsburgh accent, specifically certain words, like yins, and the hard O that you have. Like, I'm not gonna drink scotch in Pittsburgh. I'm gonna drink scotch in Pittsburgh.
And I have to end all of my sentences with "in at," right?
That's a new. I didn't know that one. I'm gonna store that.
That's a good one.
Awesome. Well, cool. Very cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this project and maybe why you decided to use Gutenberg for it?
Okay, great. Yeah. So the client's a local insurance company, and they had a website a long time ago, but then hadn't had a website for several years. So they had no WordPress experience. They, again, didn't have a website at all. So coming into it, instead of having to teach them the classic editor and then in 6 months or whatever the timetable was, reteaching them Gutenberg, I thought just start with Gutenberg from the start, because it was a really basic site, like about services, contact, request for quote, and they were going to do some blog posts, but again, very basic. We used a Genesis theme that already existed, just a little bit of customizations. So it was pretty straightforward. So I thought it would be a good candidate for Gutenberg, so that I know also too with other clients how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I think in my teaching of other people, that's probably not the best way to word that. When I teach other people, that's generally my approach, is that if they have never used WordPress before, start at Gutenberg, right? Because it'll reduce the amount of teaching you'll have to do.
Exactly, for sure.
So I'm going to go a little bit off script, right? I provided these questions earlier, but I do want to ask, if the site is launched and you've already trained the clients on this, what was their reception to Gutenberg?
They were fine with it, because they didn't know any different. They just were, it was just how it works. And I think, they're familiar with things like Microsoft Word, Outlook, these are all very visual things. They know buttons and, where to click, and you basically just say, this is how it works. And, they were fine. Also, we didn't get really complicated. We didn't do any of the beta stuff, the columns. We didn't do image galleries and things like that. We did a couple short codes, but, basically headings, paragraphs. We used the classic editor just for a tiny little bit, but I ended up converting those to blocks. So they were fine with it. They didn't have any problems.
Cool. Very cool. And in using Gutenberg for this project, what do you think is something that was made easier by using Gutenberg?
I really liked how you can move the content around. So it was really easy to drag and drop, especially when they changed their mind. Oh, we want to add this first, or, oh, we can't put that in that order. Really easy to drag and drop. And I also really liked on the top left, there's a little button with an eye in it for the content structure. So you can see that you've used the appropriate headings in the right order. So I've some clients in the past who really like, I like how heading 4 looks, so I'm just going to use heading 4 here. But trying to kind of guide my clients, like, okay, there should be heading 1 on the page, and it should be the title. And then you want to start with heading 2. And then if you have some heading 3s, you can use that. And we did. So I really like that we could see, that they use the correct ones in the correct place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that is one of a couple of features that will be maybe not surprisingly useful, but way more useful than what you have in the classic editor, which is nothing like that, right? Because you can see it. It allows you to focus more on the content. I think that's kind of the gem that I'm pulling out from what you just said. You can easily reorder content based on feedback, and you don't have to like copy and paste. You can just kind of drag the blocks, and that content structure outline is really great, especially for writing long form content.
Right, definitely.
Awesome. So what didn't go as expected? Especially because we're recording this, I think, on the day 5.0 beta 1 is coming out, which means that you used it before 5.0 beta 1. So there were probably some kinks.
Right. So I think just part of the learning curve of anything new is just, where does the functionality live? So I know I want to do something. How can I do it? Where is it? So I didn't end up using this, but I was looking for it, the more tag. So I use the more tag every once in a while. Where is it? So I was looking really hard in the paragraph block because that made sense to me, but it's its own separate block now. So, now I know that, and now it's fine. So, it's not a big deal. Also, to not specifically a challenge per se, but every time you use it, like you said, in every new version that comes out, there is something new. So something I didn't know about. So when I did this site, Yoast didn't have the structured data blocks. So there's an FAQ and a how-to, which is really cool. So I think maybe because I didn't know about it, because it didn't exist at the time, I would have to go back and kind of look through and say, okay, maybe I need to go back and redo a page, or make use of this where it didn't exist. But I think once it comes out, most of the functionality will be there in my mind, and then any additional things, if they came out, you can add them back in. But so not challenges per se, but just a few little things.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yoast, I wanna drive that point home, I think, because I don't think I knew this. Yoast, for their Gutenberg support, has structured data blocks for things like FAQs.
Yeah, so there's 2 blocks now that I just noticed recently. There's an FAQ and a how-to. So when you look through that big list of blocks, they were at the bottom. And really cool. So yay, structured data.
Yeah.
So definitely very cool. I didn't use them because it wasn't, the site didn't lend itself to that. But so I'm not sure how they look, but I think any kind of structured data you want to add to your site, would definitely be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not something that Gutenberg does natively, right? I mean, we're essentially just making giant content again, but it's something that Gutenberg has the ability to do, is create structured data. John Ekman talks about that in one of his WordCamp talks. So it's very cool to see Yoast and other people implementing things like that.
Right. And it'll be cool to see what people come up with, in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one more question before I ask you about your recommendations is that you mentioned that you used a Studio Press theme. how was that? Were there any kind of hoops you had to jump through to make sure everything worked okay?
No, not at all. It was pretty seamless. I followed the theme setup, for the home page, and really the other pages were just the Gutenberg pages, and yeah, it was great.
Cool, very cool. And one thing I'm planning on doing is testing out Gutenberg with a StudioPress theme, and then the StudioPress Dam Buster
Okay.
plugin, which was specifically made for Beaver Builder,
Mhm.
but it kind of gets rid of the content restraints, so you can maybe take advantage of some of the things like the cover image a little bit better in a StudioPress theme. So that's something I've been noodling on, and I just wanted to put out there for the audience. But as we wrap up, uh, what recommendations do you have for people who might want to start implementing WordPress 5.0 or Gutenberg today?
So I think that we talked a little bit about this before, but using it on something really simple, so one page or one post, or even a simple site, just kind of spending some time with it, looking through and investigating all the blocks. And when you install Gutenberg, there is a demo, so you can play with that demo. And sometimes kind of seeing those in action versus just seeing the blocks that are available will spark something in you. You say, oh, look, I didn't know you could do that way. And there's so many more things too. So I went to WordCamp Minneapolis and heard Eric talk from WP Block Party, and did some really amazing things. Alonzo talked at WordCamp Pittsburgh, which I helped with. And I also saw some plugins from Atomic Blocks
Oh
and
yeah.
the stackable Ultimate Gutenberg blocks. And I didn't look into those because, again, that site didn't really lend itself, to, really amazing things. But there are really cool things happening. And Atomic Blocks seems to have a theme too. I just actually sent it to someone the other day, like, oh, hey, I know you're starting a new thing. Maybe start with this theme. It might be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I actually use the Atomic Blocks theme in my Introduction to Gutenberg course,
Oh,
and
awesome.
it's very nice, and it's got very good Gutenberg support, as you'd
Hmm.
expect.
That's very
Uh,
cool.
awesome. Well, Renee, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome. And I'm gonna, for one regional thing, as I live near Philadelphia now, is I've been drinking Wawa coffee,
Oh no.
and I know that there's a pretty hard divide
There is,
in
definitely.
Pennsylvania between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. You guys are sheets.
Sheets. I
Uh,
know. You should have told me. I would have brought my sheet coffee with me. I could have stopped on the way and
Interestingly enough, I went to college in Scranton,
okay.
and we have a Sheets but no Wawa there. The closest Wawa is about 40
Oh.
minutes away. So
Oh my goodness.
I,
How did you survive?
well, I'm gonna be honest with you. Coming from New York, we didn't have like a Sheets. We had like a 7-Eleven, but that's
Mhm.
not Sheets or Wawa.
Mhm.
So I liked Sheets until I moved closer to Philly, and my wife and my in-laws were like, "What is the matter with you? Like you're like
Traitor.
yeah, exactly. They're like, well,
That's
you're a
funny.
barbarian." I'm like, well, I don't
Right.
know. So
That's super funny.
yeah. So we've got like real bagel joints in New York, whatever. But
This is true. You do have some good bagels. We don't have any of that out here. I mean, Panera, like you can't really call that.
yeah, right, yeah. So hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Implementing Gutenberg, a YouTube series where I interview somebody about how they've implemented Gutenberg on a live site. Today, my guest is Bill Erickson, a WordPress developer extraordinaire. Bill, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show and do this.
Of course.
We met like what, a year ago, maybe at WordCamp US or something like that. Like in
Uh,
real, like for
yeah, it
real,
was
like actually
there
talk,
was
right?
a conference. I don't remember which one. I think it was Post Status, maybe. That's
Yes,
what it
that's
was.
exactly what it was. Post status publish. Yeah, and so like I know like we've kind of hung around in the same circles, but that was like the first time we actually
Hmm.
hung out due to Sean Hesketh, right? A
Yep.
mutual friend of ours. So
Hmm.
cool. So I saw you kind of tweeting and blogging about how what it's like implementing Gutenberg, and that was why I reached out. So I will include the link to your blog in the description for anybody watching. But um, I know you've implemented a couple of uh, projects using Gutenberg on a couple of projects.
Hmm.
Maybe just pick one of your favorites or one that's fresh in your mind, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so this is actually a project that is still under development, so it's not live yet, but probably in the next few months it will be. We were building a site, it's rcp.com, and basically converting their current site into WordPress. It's hard-coded at the moment, and it has a great looking design and nice features, but the web developer left and then they wanted to move to WordPress. So design-wise, we were just sort of trying to replicate a lot of their features. And during the process, I saw there was some good interactions for Gutenberg. We weren't designing specifically for Gutenberg. We've done that before, like where we start with the Gutenberg blocks. But on this one, it just sort of made sense. I found that there were about 9 custom blocks that we had to build to implement their features, and it just really came together better than anything else we could have done, rather than turning off the editor and building with meta boxes or short codes or anything. So it seemed to be a really good fit for what a good Gutenberg site would be.
Cool, very cool. So I like that. So you didn't try to like force Gutenberg into some project just to use it. You kind of looked at the specs for this website, a static website, you said, um, and then thought, all right, Gutenberg would actually be a good fit based on the content that they have, right?
Yeah, I actually surprised my designer because we've done a few of these projects where we design it for Gutenberg, where we start with, here are all the core blocks. Now let's design how they look. Now let's assemble the pages by stacking the blocks in different orders. So we've done, those are like what my designer thought were our Gutenberg sites. He delivers me these designs and I tell him I'm using Gutenberg. He's like, what? You can use Gutenberg for this? And I'm like, yeah, it'll work great. And I find that Gutenberg works really well. Like it's a block-based content editor. It's not a page builder, but if you have unique content blocks, so something that's sort of visually interesting that would be difficult to do in the classic editor, it works great for it. Like having a lot of like call to actions or like call out boxes or like widget-like things. One of the things on this site, they had a newsletter section. They do monthly newsletters, and there's probably 10 or 12 articles within it. And at the top, there is like a table of contents, and you can click through and go down to that section. Rather than hard coding all of that in every single newsletter, I created a table of contents block. They just drop it in there. It automatically finds every H2 in the page. If they have put an anchor link, it uses that. If not, it adds anchor links to every heading and then allows them to
Wow.
click through it. So simple things like that where they're assembling it and they're like, I need a table of contents. Now I need to type my heading and add a separator. It flowed really well with Gutenberg.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you have this dynamic Gutenberg block. Did you use, this is like this wasn't
Mhm.
predetermined, this question, but did you use like the ACF block builder? Or did you build that in React?
I've used the ACF block builder for that one, but I mean, in the editor itself, we're not doing anything real special. It just has a message that says this will list out the headings because I didn't want
Nice.
to go and mess around with the Gutenberg editor too much on
Yeah.
that one. And then on the front end, we're just filtering the content, finding all the H2s and adding IDs and things. So yeah, it's mostly it's just PHP, and so yeah, we're not using React on that block.
No, but that's cool. I really like that, right? And that makes sense, right? Because then if they add the table of contents block and then decide, oh, we need to add a link here, now you're causing stress on the admin that you don't necessarily need, like processing stress.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
don't want it to
update
be
the
like
table of
live
contents.
refreshing
Yeah, right.
everything. Like they
Yeah.
don't need that. They just need to know that this is where a table of
This,
contents
yeah.
for
Yeah,
this
exactly.
specific
Right.
context.
Right. And I mean, to that point, like people are saying that Gutenberg is WYSIWYG, but it's not really. It's more WYSIWYG than the classic
Mhm.
editor. But you're not seeing your actual theme or the actual styles. So it's not like you need something that's like super feature complete on every change either. So I really like that approach. Um, so you answered this a little bit already, but what's one thing that you think Gutenberg lends itself, since this is still being developed,
Mhm.
super well to? What something that Gutenberg makes easier for this project?
Yeah, I would say content that's just a little bit more complex than just sort of the standard text. So if you're just dealing with a few headings and paragraphs, that'll work the same whether it's in the classic editor or the Gutenberg editor. Just standard text seems to be fine. But where Gutenberg really shines is the areas where you need something a bit more complex than that. And prior to Gutenberg, you would depend upon short codes, or I'd often use shortcode UI so that we could insert a short code and then render it in the page, so it gave a Gutenberg-like experience. And so that's what we were using, or custom meta boxes and stuff. And I find that the new Gutenberg editor allows us to do a lot more with the standard editor. And so we're less reliant on meta boxes and shortcodes and adding new functionality in that way. And so it gives the client a lot more flexibility, because these tools that we build for them, they can then use on any of their templates. So before, I probably would have made a newsletter page template, and then all of these special features like the table of contents would have been automatically added at the top, or built through the meta box or something. And so it'd be sort of hard-coded-ish. But now, because I've been able to build it as a block, they can throw it anywhere else. So if they want it on their privacy policy page, they can just drop it there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's a great point, right? Because now you don't need to create a custom template, or maybe even a custom post type, right? Like you don't necessarily need a newsletter custom post type. It could just be a category of the regular blog post or something like that.
Yeah, I find that building on top of Gutenberg, like it's increased what the average user can do with the editor. They're able to make more feature-rich content easier. And so we're able to focus our time on building more generic tools that allow them to build out their pages. I also really like the reusable blocks. So like we have join our newsletter call to action. And so rather than hard coding that and making it a short code or something, we made it like a call to action block, type in the newsletter stuff, and then click save as reusable. And so they can insert that everywhere. And so it's sort of a lot of the functionality that we've been sort of tacking onto WordPress. Like I would build that as a short code with shortcode UI, and then a theme settings page where they can manage the text of it. So it's sort of checking the box on the things that I used to have to go around WordPress to do. Now it can be done inside.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great, I really love what you said, they're tacking on, right? Or you're a Genesis, you do a lot of Genesis work, right? Like the prescribed method of adding something like a pricing table in the current iteration of StudioPress themes or Genesis themes is copy the HTML from the documentation and post it in the visual editor of the classic editor. With Gutenberg, you don't need to do that really. Like I imagine that StudioPress will start rolling out either just generic classes for the columns block or their own pricing table blocks, so that you don't need to mess around with HTML anymore just to have a pricing table.
Yeah, I think I mean, for features like that, it's going to be great. And also, in more generic terms, the way StudioPress themes have been approached in the past is they use widget areas for the homepage, because Classic Editor wasn't able to build a complex page, so now they're depending on widgets. But with Gutenberg, they're like, well, now we can do a lot more with the editor, so they're going to be rebuilding those, making them actual Gutenberg blocks with columns and things. And with StudioPress plus now their purchase of Atomic blocks, you're going to have a deeper integration there. So instead of saying copy this HTML, this is your pricing table, there's going to be pricing table option in Atomic blocks, and then all of the StudioPress themes will work with that. So it helps them build more rich templates, lets you build more rich things without having to do a lot of custom coding on your own.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm very excited to see. I mean, it's a bunch of smart guys, and when they picked up Atomic blocks, they got even smarter guys. So, even more smarter guys, I should say, not even smarter guys. So I'm really excited to see what direction all of that goes in with StudioPress. So cool. I think that's probably the perfect use case. Plus, this is a client that has never used WordPress before, or never used it, at least on this site. So they don't have that preconceived notion of how WordPress is supposed to work.
Yeah, that's another one of the deciding factors we've been using when deciding whether to use Gutenberg or not. If it's a brand new site, I don't want to train them on an interface that's going to change in a few months. So I'd rather get them started with what's coming. And if it's a fairly simple site, then there's no reason for us not to build it on top of Gutenberg. Some of our more complex sites are still using the classic editor because we depend upon it in certain ways. And so we're sort of planning what we're going to do in the future. And in some other pages, on some sites, we'll use Gutenberg for most things, and then like maybe the home page and a landing page are gonna like remove both the classic editor and Gutenberg and build that with meta boxes, which is like how we build our more advanced pages. But yeah, I've found that for new sites, for simple sites, and for these more advanced content block-like sites, Gutenberg brings a ton of value, and so we're more willing to push through whatever little bugs there might be, and to do a bit more extra training for the client to give them a better product at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. I really love that. And so we've been basically all smiles here so far, but what's a challenge that you've hit because of using Gutenberg?
I would say there's two challenges. One is, like, the more immediate one is when you're building something out and you find a bug, and whether it's an actual bug or like something that stops work, or it's just something that doesn't work well, like a usability issue, those are annoying. And so I usually try and, at the end of every few days or every week, when I make sort of a list of all the things that bugged me when I was building out this Gutenberg site, and then I go and post them as issues and try and get these things resolved before the client gets it in their hands. For instance, on one of the sites we built, we used the columns block a lot, and then we also used a shortcode block to insert icons and things. Like, the shortcode block has like a label here, and then the shortcode here, and inside of the columns block, you ended up having one character per line in the shortcode, and so it was like this tall and pretty much unusable. So things like that, usability bugs that will be fixed before launch, but it's a little bit of a pain when you're building a site with beta software for a client. And then the other bigger issue that we've had is the fact that the styles keep changing inside of the Gutenberg editor. And so we'll style the block quote in Gutenberg to match the front end. And then after a few releases, they add some new things and add new block quote options, and then we have to go back and do it again. But those are both fairly minor. And once Gutenberg becomes official, you're going to have less of those issues, I think.
Yeah, that's well, so first of all, I like what you said about when you find bugs, you report them, right? I think that's the most constructive thing you can do. Unless you're a React developer, then like go grab a couple maybe if you have some time and fix them yourself. I am certainly not that, and I don't want to hurt the project, so I'm not going to go fix bugs, but report everything that you find. There's like a feedback button inside the Gutenberg plugin too. And I totally understand what you're saying about the styles keep changing. We were talking about this in the pre-show, but I kind of based my course off of their feature complete date. And like even a week before launch, it doesn't seem like things are feature complete. Like little things keep changing, and that is a little bit of a frustration, but it's like you said, it's not a deal breaker by any stretch. So cool, very cool. And as we kind of wrap this up, what advice do you have for folks who want to start using Gutenberg on their actual like live projects today?
So I would definitely encourage you to start testing your site in Gutenberg now. Create a staging environment or a local dev environment, install the plugin, see how the default editor works. There's also some tools or some approaches you can use to add new Gutenberg features to your site. So some of the Gutenberg features depend upon your theme supporting them. So an existing theme won't have support for like the wide or full images or editor styles. And so if you go look at the handbook or the blog post that I assume is going to be attached to this, I wrote a bunch of different theme settings that you can add to your theme to add theme support for all these nice new features. So set up your color palettes to match your brand and set up wide images and stuff like that. So there's some things you can do to sort of get more out of Gutenberg. But really, I just say start playing with it and see how you'll work with your content. I mean, for most content, it's just going to be the same, but maybe a little better. It's like a standard content pages like blog posts and things. You're not going to have any issues there. It's going to be the same as you're used to. Your more advanced pages, you might need some work or maybe think through some things. But Gutenberg gives you a lot more tools than TinyMC had. So you'll probably be better off when you're building out these things. You'll have more tools in your pocket to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice. I'll plug kind of two things of my own. I have a theme course that I developed with Zach Gordon. So you can find that in the show notes below. I'm certain that we've probably used your blog at some point for reference. And as this episode is released, Gutenberg is set to come out in less than a week. On Gutenberg launch day, I am going to upgrade my WooCommerce and LMS site on a staging server, but live in real time. So if you're interested in seeing what that's going to look like, there's a sign up button in the description for this video below. Bill, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Implementing Gutenberg. Today, my guest is Alonso Indocochea. He is the founder of Block Party, a Gutenberg blocks plugin. So this is going to be a little bit different than our previous interviews, in that I've talked to people who have implemented Gutenberg on client sites. And with Alonso, we're going to be talking about actually building a product on top of Gutenberg. Alonso, how are you today?
Very good, very good. It's another sunny day here in New Mexico.
Excellent, excellent. Alonso and I met at WordCamp Grand Rapids, right? And I knew that we would get along because you are a self-deprecating Mets fan and I am a boisterous Yankee fan. So I think those two go well together, as opposed to like my friend who's a Mets fan and takes things very seriously.
Yeah, well, I've been around a lot of boisterous Yankee fans. I have no idea why you guys seem to, take offense or be upset with a piddly Met fan who gets to win a World Series every 30 years. So, but you're a New Yorker, so I'm with that, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one was it 2015. I was pulling for the Mets. Is that when you guys made it to the World Series?
Yeah. And we lost to the Royals of all teams.
I know.
But yeah, look, that I think that is a misperception a little bit about that Yankee Met thing. At the end of the day, we're all, having gone through the experience of living in the New York metro area or in the city proper, it just binds us in a way. So, these are all just kind of surface choices at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Just it's a little fun rivalry. I don't think it's not as serious as I live in Philly now, and I'm a Giants fan, and I made the mistake of wearing my Giants jersey, and that was not a great day for me.
No. Yeah, watch out for that.
Yep. But in any case, I could talk to you about sports all day. I can really talk to most people about sports all day, but I appreciate when somebody else in the WordPress space also likes sports.
Yeah, there's a few of us.
Yeah. Usually people, sports ball, but which is probably what half of the people watching this are saying right now. So why don't we talk about Block Party? How did you come up with the idea for this, and what made you want to create a product for Gutenberg that's been out for a little bit now, right? As we record this, 5.0 isn't officially out, but this is like a full-fledged productized plugin.
Yeah. So it's actually technically been out since April, and we, trying to anticipate that, maybe Gutenberg at 5.0 would be out in April. If you can believe it, at some point a long time ago, there was this idea that it could be out in April. And so really where it started with us was in January. I was an organizer for WordCamp Albuquerque 2018. And we had a lot of great speakers locally, but also from all over and in the WordPress ecosystem. It was really fun, a great opportunity to put on this great event with lots of people from out of town. And so I started talking to a lot of people, developers, business people that were looking at this Gutenberg and talking about the possibilities and the opportunities. And we actually, myself and two of my guys in my company, we actually went to Contributor Day and decided, hey, let's take a deep dive and we'll make a pull request for Gutenberg. And so, so as to kind of educate ourselves on how it worked and what the different strategies were. And so we did that. It was actually, believe it or not, an accessibility pull request that didn't get pulled in. Funny enough how that works. But what it did serve is to sort of educate us on how it worked. And we knew a little bit about it before, but we didn't really know a ton. So where we got excited is how Gutenberg responds to the thing that I think is the sort of dirty secret of WordPress, which is that the editor stinks. Mm-hmm. And it's been around for a long time. And there are all these sort of solutions for content and data input in WordPress that have been sort of workarounds because of the limitations of the editor. And it's something we kind of deal with as people that work in the WordPress space all the time, running an agency here in New Mexico that specializes in WordPress. And so we were really excited about that. And then we were also really excited about the technology and the possibility to really do truly what you see is what you get, using a technology like React. The reason we were really excited about the technology is because we do a lot of application development at my company, and we primarily use React to deliver value to our clients in terms of building user experiences that are complex, but easy to use. So that kind of was sort of, that was the point, the crux point for us, where we decided, hey, I think we're kind of uniquely positioned to actually build on this and try some things out. So we had a kind of internal company sort of hack day with Gutenberg, kind of maybe a month afterwards, and one of my partners, senior developer Eric Develak, he basically put together this Gutenberg block that was a pie chart, and using Google Charts API. And when he did that and we saw what the possibilities were there, we got so excited that we were like, hey, we really need to make some advanced blocks and be able to offer these to people. And we chose data visualization because it's a strength of ours, but also we felt like there were opportunities in data visualization.
Nice. So this came out of like a legitimate want to contribute to the Gutenberg ecosystem. A lot of times I interview people and they're like, well, I need it for a client, and so I decided to sell it afterwards. But it sounds like we might be going the other way with you, right? So you do client work at your agency, is that right?
Yeah, we do a lot of client work, and I think they're related insofar as what we've been doing and what we still do now, and what we're trying to get, I guess, away from eventually, is we do custom meta box. That's kind of the way we do things. We use CMD2. A lot of people use ACF. A lot of people do their own thing, but so yeah, that's what we primarily use, and we primarily use it because we feel like it's the easiest and best experience for a real business that needs, it needs to be able to update content and change content, and also the sort of areas where they need to change are content-wise, and not really focused on changing the design or the layout or the style, because we're kind of handling that on the website. So we always felt like that was the easiest way and the most scalable way. But if you think about it, really, all these solutions are kind of hacks. Mm-hmm. And so we just felt that for us, it was something we were really excited about for clients, certainly. But we kind of sort of saw it as a way to uniquely position ourselves in this ecosystem, frankly. So, and that's kind of the line of logic we pursue.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so are you, well, okay, so let's talk about the project a little bit. So it's got some free blocks and some premium blocks, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
What was the decision, like how did you decide where to draw the line?
Yeah, so originally there were no free blocks. I think what we came around to, some kind of freemium model. So I guess from our standpoint is we were trying to play to our strengths, right? So, there are lots and lots of players in the WordPress space that are going to make beautiful presentation blocks. And it's not to say that I don't think we can create beautiful blocks. Of course, I think we can. But it's a crowded, competitive landscape for these presentation blocks. Where we felt we had the opportunity to separate ourselves were in blocks that have advanced functionality, possibly interacting with microservices, with other APIs. That's where we felt like we could build something really cool, and the sort of competitive landscape would be less crowded. And so what we ended up doing was we've made the premium blocks, the data visualization blocks that are more complex. And we've made some of the other one-off blocks that we just did, again, as either part of our little hackathon or just kind of, experiments. We've made those free. I think the neatest, probably the neatest one in my mind, the neatest free one that we've made is the carousel block. And one of the things we hate with with WordPress is how do you implement a carousel for a client? So we actually have a custom carousel solution that we built using Bootstrap, where the client can make edits and stuff like that. We have that in place for our projects, but we felt like the third-party solutions were overly complicated, unnecessary features, a lot of bloat. So what we did was we tried to make the easiest to set up and modify carousel with Gutenberg. So you can go on the site, Block Party, and check out the carousel block. There are a couple of other free ones. I think there's a pricing table block. We felt those were blocks that were either going to be replicated by other people, or possibly even end up at being like default blocks. We felt like the premium blocks that we're selling are blocks that are going to just be a lot harder for people to build, and so that was the logic behind that decision.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've written my own tutorials on how to do a pricing table with the columns block in Gutenberg. So I think that line makes a lot of sense. And so what did you find, since we're talking more developing a product here? I like to ask, what does Gutenberg make easier? What was challenging in Gutenberg? Let's talk about the development side of things, because most people in the WordPress development space have focused on PHP for the last however many years, and now we're switching to React. So what is something that you like about React that makes things in the WordPress ecosystem easier?
Well, look, at the end of the day, it's fun. I'm the CEO of my company. I don't write a ton of code these days. I criticize a whole bunch of people's code all the time. I test things out and say, hey, this doesn't work. This is broken. What's going on? But frankly, I'm kind of technology agnostic in the sense that it's really about the end experience. And what I see is a true what you see is what you get experience that using technologies like React can deliver. And so, like, for example, if you fire up our pie chart block, you can build a pie chart in your post right there and get a preview right there. It's, you can see it. And as you're building it, you can see how it changes, how the pie chart changes. So, and one of the things we did, actually, one of the new things we did is there's a Google Sheets integration now. So you can just load in a Google Sheet and it will create your pie chart based off of the data in that sheet. Basically the options that you had on creating pie charts or any kind of complex data visualizations were very, very limited, and none of them were truly what you see is what you get. And so using that as an example, React is just a mechanism by which we deliver a better user experience for content managers. One where they can be empowered to create really rich and dynamic content and have more control over it. And that's it. And I think that's the thing people get kind of lost in. when they talk about React, PHP, and all this stuff, I really don't care. And frankly, like our developers, we work all over the place on lots of different projects. Our developers are excited to work on new tech, and not just for the sake of working on new tech, but so that a different kind of user experience can be delivered. That's it. So that's what I see this represents. This represents a different paradigm and a better user experience at the end of the day for content managers.
I really like that answer. Because you're right. Like the technology will change, right? We're not going to be using React in 10 years or 15 years. Probably we're going to be using something else, and we're going to have VR or whatever. So I really like that answer. On that same token, this product was out in April, and Gutenberg is not, as we record this, out. It seems like so long ago that we thought April was going to be the official launch of 5.0. But what are some of the challenges around that? You're developing your own software for beta software.
Yeah, a tremendous number of challenges from the standpoint of, deprecated functions and so it's constantly changing, and you're constantly having to change with it. We soft launched the product in April. We didn't market it in any meaningful way. We just put it out there, showed it to our friends, and let people know kind of what was going on. And so we kind of built in sort of the ability to, we haven't had a huge user base to be so worried about breaking bugs and things like that, and being able to respond right away. So that's one thing, right? But the other piece is, this is a long-term play for us. And so we've invested the resources to support this product. And to me, I think what's really, really important is to be one of the first players to embrace the product and build really, really cool things with it. Because for us, as an agency, one of the things that we've talked about a lot with WordPress is we really like this ecosystem for lots and lots of reasons. It's an enormous ecosystem, right? It dwarfs every other software ecosystem out there. Its user base is enormous. But its user base is also not accustomed to paying for things. Mm-hmm. And so the projects that we tend to work with WordPress oftentimes are smaller projects in scale and in revenue than what we do business solution application work or mobile application work or things like that. So if we as a company are going to scale and we're going to stay in the WordPress ecosystem, we have to do something different, right? And so we knew that this was in beta, essentially. We knew that there was a lot of uncertainty about when it was going to come out. We also got to understand the controversy around the implementation and all that stuff. And so for us, the resources we've invested in it have just been part of, taking a risk, but a risk we felt was worth it to sort of position ourselves in a different way in the ecosystem.
Nice. I like that a lot. And on that same token, as we come up on time here, what is some advice that you have for somebody who might want to get into the Gutenberg product space?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I talked about is expect lots of changes, expect to having, invest a lot of time in support. I think that's one. I would also say there's a lot of products out there that are the same kinds of blocks. Divider blocks, accordion blocks, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
Primarily presentation blocks. I would really take a look at some of the other possibilities of what you can do beyond just sort of simple presentation blocks. I thought a lot about industry-specific blocks, all kinds of things. And then the other thing is, and this is something I've talked about a lot at different WordCamps this year, is I think it's bigger. The opportunity here is bigger than just a collection of blocks. It's bigger than, like a simple product. I really believe that this is going to change the ecosystem. And it's the biggest disruption to the ecosystem in years. So, I put my thinking cap on and really think about something that's going to push the boundaries, push the limits, push Gutenberg as far as it can go, and run with it. I think it's worth taking risks when there's a disruption. There's always winners and losers in the disruption, and the losers tend to be the people that just sort of stand by and idly watch everyone else take advantage. So go out there and think of great ideas and take risks and make it happen.
Again, really, really like that advice. I think it's something that you should definitely heed if you're thinking, hey, should I get into this? Um, should I try to build my own Gutenberg product? Should I take advantage of the changing ecosystem? Because uh, Alonzo, you are correct. This is the biggest change to the ecosystem, and it is going to go beyond just blocks. And I would encourage anybody out there to read what Yoast is writing about, and check out John Ekman's talk from WordCamp Boston about how we can really take advantage of things like deeper data and affect more than just the presentation. So Alonzo, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, Alonzo_IN. I don't tweet a whole ton, but you can check out Block Party, wpblock.party. And my agency is 11 Online. It's 11online.us. Come check us out.
Thanks so much to Justin, Rene, Bill, and Alonzo for joining me on their journeys for implementing Gutenberg. It was really interesting to hear kind of the different aspects and approaches that they took, and with Alonzo specifically being a pretty early adopter in the product market, which is very cool. So if you liked this episode, be sure to leave it a rating and review on iTunes. It helps people discover us. As a matter of fact, I ran the stats recently, and the show went from about 3,000 downloads in the first month to per episode to 5,000 downloads in the first month per episode, and it went from about 25,000 monthly downloads to over 40,000 monthly downloads. So I really appreciate you coming in and listening and sharing the show. It has helped the show grow considerably over the last 6 months. So very excited for 2019. And be sure to tune in next week when you'll hear Jeff Large interview me about how I built it. So thanks so much for listening. And until next time, get out there and build something.